Halloween is the perfect time for scary stories. And this year I keep thinking about one of the scariest stories I know. Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë. It's kind of a ghost story, but it's not the ghosts that scare you. It's the horror of Heathcliff. In the 1770s in northern England, where they still believed in goblins and fairies, there was a farmhouse called Wuthering Heights, the home of the Earnshaw family. One day, Mr. Earnshaw brought home a mysterious young boy he found starving in the streets. No one knew where the boy came from, or who his parents were. He looked too old for his age, had dark hair, and spoke a strange language no one could understand. The Earnshaws assumed he might be a foreigner. But a foreigner? From where? Because there were those who thought he wasn't a boy at all, but a changeling, a demonic child left behind by the goblins and fairies. Whoever, or whatever he was, they named him Heathcliff, after one of their sons who had died in childhood. They didn't give him their last name, though. He was just Heathcliff, like he was a dog or a horse or something. He didn't have the same privileges as the other kids, and he didn't act like the other kids.
He seemed a sullen, patient child, hardened perhaps to ill treatment.
When people would hurt him, he wouldn't scream or get angry. He just stayed quiet and brooded, like he was used to pain. And when people were nice to him, he didn't show any gratitude. Half the family hated Heathcliff and were jealous because Mr. Earnshaw treated him like a little pet. Especially their son, who tried to make Heathcliff's life as miserable as possible. But Heathcliff did grow close to the family's only daughter, Catherine. Too close, most people thought. So close, it was weird. When Mr. Earnshaw died, his son took over the farm, and as revenge for all the love his dad had given Heathcliff instead of him, he put Heathcliff to work in the fields like he was a servant. Catherine still loved Heathcliff, if you want to call it love.
My love for Heathcliff resembles the eternal rocks beneath, a source of little visible delight, but necessary. Nellie, I am Heathcliff. He's always, always in my mind, not as a pleasure any more than I am always a pleasure to myself, but as my own being.
No matter how she felt about him, though, Catherine wouldn't marry Heathcliff because he didn't have any money. Instead, she decided to marry the guy from the next farm over, a man Heathcliff hated.
The moment her regard ceased, I would have torn his heart out and drunk his blood.
Catherine's plan was actually to use her new husband's money to help Heathcliff escape her brother, and they could still be together, even though she was married to somebody else. But Heathcliff didn't know that. He just flew into a rage and ran away, and disappeared for years. When Heathcliff returned, he was a wealthy man, and he spent the next few decades using his new power to systematically destroy and kill everyone and everything around him. He didn't just hack people up with a machete like, what's-his-face. He possessed people. He didn't literally possess people like... But he did take over their lives and destroy them from the inside out. He tricked his old enemy, Catherine's brother, into mortgaging Wuthering Heights to him. Then he moved into the house with him, turned the man's son against him, and then tormented him until he died of alcoholism. Then he took the man's son as his own, just so he could corrupt him into a mean, illiterate simpleton. He married Catherine's sister-in-law, just so he could abandon her and let her die. He let Wuthering Heights rot away around him, and he was cruel to everyone. Not just by calling them names and being a jerk. He manipulated people and lied to turn them against each other, make them hate each other as much as they hated him. He was even cruel to Catherine, right up until she died shortly after giving birth to a little girl. Then Heathcliff howled and summoned her ghost to come and haunt him for the rest of his life.
Catherine Earnshaw, may you not rest as long as I am living. You said I killed you. Haunt me then. The murdered do haunt the murderers, I believe. I know that ghosts have wandered on earth. Be with me always, take any form, drive me mad. Only do not leave me in this abyss where I cannot find you.
Heathcliff kept scheming and plotting. He eventually took over Catherine's husband's farm by arranging a marriage between his own teenage son and Catherine's daughter, then neglecting his son until he died, leaving Heathcliff all his property. Then Heathcliff was master of it all, and all the survivors he hadn't tortured into an early grave became his tenants and lived like prisoners in the 2 farmhouses. He spent his time tormenting them, day in and day out, until one night Catherine's ghost came to the window and dragged off Heathcliff's soul. As scary as Heathcliff is, he's not just evil. I mean, he is evil, but he's not just mean and greedy and selfish for no reason. All his spooky behavior comes from deep emotion, all his passion and rage and hatred he has inside him. Kinda makes the book feel like a romance, and some people do call Wuthering Heights a dark romance. But it's not just dark, it's really dark. When the poet Dante Gabriel Rossetti wrote about the book, he said the action is laid in hell. And man, that's what it feels like. A romance set in hell. At the beginning of the book, you feel bad for Heathcliff, but by the end, he is an absolute monster. It makes all that passion and rage he's got just feel demonic. And who hasn't gotten so mad they feel a little... So even though Heathcliff is kind of a monster, he also feels real. A little too real. Too familiar. There's always a little part of you in the back of your mind that's thinking the same thing Catherine did. I am Heathcliff. Happy Halloween.